My name is Jennifer Overdevest, Jennifer Overdevest.
And then,
I don't think it's processed yet. I don't think my brain has processed everything that happened. I think I keep seeing his picture and I keep going, oh, that's Ryan. And you keep thinking, oh, you keep hoping it's for something good. And to hear that he senselessly lost his life, it just doesn't make sense yet to me. And he was such a good person. I just, and I can't make sense of any of it, really. I mean, I hope something good comes of it, but I don't think anything can good come from it.
and how do you describe some of the stuff he produced in West Virginia? I know that he was
He was just funny, and he and Wes, they always want to do kind of funny projects, and so they did some funny short films. They had a lot of fun doing it, and when he produced, he was so even keeled. He was such a natural born leader, and he never stressed out. And I'd be in there probably stressing out, and he'd be like, "It's fine, we're good." And it's what I remember about like when he did it, because he produced and directed a lot of live shows, and so he really knew how to be calm and cool under pressure.
spoke to a guy today outside the sheriff's station who brought his son and brought flowers, and he stood there for about 5 minutes and didn't move.
Yeah.
And I'd asked him, you know, why'd you bring your son? And he had said because he wanted him to get to know the guy that would always make time to wave to him.
Oh.
Because the guy rode his bike to work, always ran into him at Subway, and he would always make time to like, hey, wave at him and to say hi. And he'd pass by him, his patrol car would wave at him on his bike. He said, I wanted my son to know who he is because the guy always made time for me. He always made time to, make me feel like I counted. Does that surprise you in any
No,
way?
no, he was that kind of person who, no matter what kid came in, it didn't matter. He always, I think, made the kids feel comfortable. He was just such a genuine person. And I think he just cared about people.
Tell us your first and last name.
Alison Hunsaker.
Spell it for me.
Alison Hunsaker.
Allison, how long have you taught here and what do you teach?
I've taught here for almost 17 years. I teach English. And then before that, I taught at Castaic Middle School, which is where I first met Ryan.
Tell us about your relationship with Ryan.
So I first met Ryan when he was a middle schooler, and a lot of the stories that you hear now about him just being this kind, authentic, sincere person were all of that was already there when he was a junior high student. And then it used to be that all the kids from Castaic Middle School would come to West Ranch High School, and he actually happened to be the same year as my daughter, and they were friends. And I had him for 11th and 12th grade here as his English teacher.
I have heard that he was involved in multiple things.
He was just really gregarious. Like he got along with everyone, and he was funny. He had this dry sense of humor, but it didn't matter. He had this large circle of friends, and he could get along with anybody, no matter, you could just plop him down in a group of students. And he just was very comfortable in his own skin, that little bit of snark and sarcasm he had about him. And he was always comfortable wherever he was, or at least he certainly gave that impression, which is kind of weird for kids when they're, in adolescence, because that's kind of an angsty time. And he just was always just really grounded, always.
It seems like you didn't lose track of him once you graduated.
Well, so as I mentioned, he's the same graduating class as my daughter, and it was the same circle of friends. So even if I didn't see him, I would hear stories, right, from all the other kids about what they were all doing. And, it was not, it was so not surprising that he went into law enforcement. Of course, he's third generation, but, he was very proud of the fact that he came from a law enforcement family, and also took, I think, seriously the notion of being just walking the walk. Like, some kids talk about what they want to do in the future and how they're going to get there and they're going to evolve into that. But you saw that he was a kid who cared about being a good example all the time, making right decisions all the time, even when he was in high school. And it's very easy, right, to be, to make a slip here or a slip there, because that's part of what kids do. You know what I mean? They explore the world, they explore boundaries, but he was always really focused and he knew who he was. And it would have been surprising to me, I think, if I'd heard that he'd chosen a different line of work than the line of work, of his father and his grandfather, for sure.
How is your school community doing hearing this terrible news?
I think, I was talking to people over the weekend. I found out from my daughter because she was the one that called me, and hearing all the lovely stories, because that's it. Um, Ryan was just a lovely guy, a lovely, decent guy. And everybody has stories about just the awesome connection that they had with him. So I think everybody who knew him has just been, repeating these stories that I just want to say, I so want his mom to know, right, about how all the people that he touched his life is still resonating with them, right? About just the kindness and the camaraderie and the friendship that he shared with so many people. And they just have these really great stories. I mean, they're endless, really.
Remind us again, what years did you teach him?
So I taught him his last 2 years of high school, so his junior year and his senior year. And he was a really good student. He was a smart guy, really very clever, an excellent student, very focused on his studies. And of course, he was doing all these extracurricular activities in addition to school. So he kept up his grades while he was also an excellent athlete and part of West Ranch TV, which is kind of like the rock star group, I would say, at our high school, where the kids on West Ranch TV really are, you know, something, yes, they are the school. But he always handled that, like, he managed everything well, but he handled it with aplomb. He was just he was not cocky in any way, shape, or form. He just, he lived all these experiences, but then there was no artifice or just like boastfulness about him. He was just a really, really decent, well-rounded kid.
Before we wrap up and jump in if you have any more to say, what do you want people to take away as they mourn this tragedy? I know there was an arrest today, but that doesn't bring Ryan back.
I think the most important thing, and it's the thing that resonated with me first, is that when we talk about the kind of law enforcement officers we want in our country, um, Ryan was that guy. He was a guy who was fair and even-tempered and kind and balanced and had a moral compass. And so for me, the number one loss is for his family, because I cannot imagine what they're going through. But I also think that it is a huge loss for our community, because he was training other officers, which was so amazing to hear, and that's exactly where he should have been, because we need more of Ryan, not less of him. And I think that his loss is not just a loss, obviously, profound loss for his family and his fiance and the people who knew him, but I think it's a loss for a community that's losing just a really, really decent young man who really was all about making the community that he lived in a better place. And I think that is the most profound loss of all.
Thank you so much.
We spoke earlier about a man that I talked to today outside the Palmdale Sheriff Station who brought his son and brought flowers. And we had asked him, why did you bring your son? And he said, because I want him to know who this guy is. I want him to know who the guy that always waved to me on my bike. He'd ride his bike to work, and he'd always see him. He'd always see Ryan, and Ryan would take the time to wave because they'd run into each other at Subway and they'd talk. Does that surprise you in terms of someone who really knows him well? Does that surprise you at all?
Nope, because that was Ryan to his core. And I think all of those qualities that made him an outstanding young man made him exceptionally well suited to be an outstanding sheriff, right? The kind of person who connects with the community, right? Who cares about the people in the community that he serves. And that was a lovely story. And I thought it was so indicative, right, of who he really was. He never wavered in that.
You've had many students over the years.
Yeah.
Why does Ryan stand out? It seems to be a common thread between all of his instructors, his friends, his coworkers. He stands out from the crowd, but why for you? Why does he stand out for you?
I think, first of all, because I connect him with my experience with my own daughter, because they were friends and that whole group of students that I knew, not just as a teacher, but also as a mom. But I think also because he just was such a kind kid. He'd enter a room, he had a beautiful smile, and he was always smiling. He was always friendly. Sometimes he'd have a little sarcastic joke to add in on top of that, but he made it his point. It was never really about Ryan. I think maybe I'm having an epiphany about that, right? That he always connected with other people because he was always finding ways to make it about the other people and never about himself. And I think that's one of the reasons why people remember him, because it was part of his DNA to just naturally connect with you and never make it about himself.
Good afternoon, West Ranch. Coming up, we have news for all seniors who will be attending COC next semester. I'm Charles Norris.
And I'm Ryan Clinkunbroomer. Keep watching for more news about the theater's upcoming performance.
Today is Wednesday, April 21st, 2010.
And West Ranch TV starts right now. The library has another great opportunity for you to win a great basket full of goodies. You can win a Barnes & Noble gift card and West Ranch Icon apparel. Check out the library for more information on how you can win. And the West Ranch Rural Division Club is meeting on Friday. To celebrate Earth Day tomorrow, there will be a clothing swap after school in the staff lounge starting at 3 o'clock. See Mrs. Cox today in room 511 for more information. 554, bring your lunch. And any FBLA members planning on attending the state competition, make sure your money and paperwork are in to Mrs. Brochet in room 556 no later than the library announced the St. Patrick's Day raffle winner. Let's take it out to Spencer to see what happened. That was a part one of a two-part series that will be coming up. Now for today's sports lineup, let's head it over to Bobby the Graham Cracker Graham.
They look exactly the same. Actually pointed him out in the 12-13 and super sweet because she said they like to start with talking at the schools because it kind of talks about the kid and then, because they don't want to go bug the family.